Hello and welcome to the skating lesson. I'm Dave Leese, and today I'm thrilled to have a double interview for the comeback of the year, Ms. Debi Thomas with Shepard Clark.
Hello.
Hi.
Okay, so Debi, we were watching your videos in February when they emerged that you were skating again in Lake Placid. You didn't have your custom skates yet. You were just getting back on the ice, and this clip took off on the internet.
Oops. Trying to get into the ring.
Right.
Little mishap.
The real miracle on ice is about to happen.
So, yes, this is going to be the real miracle on ice. We are at the 1980 Lake Placid Arena where Miracle on Ice occurred, and now you're going to see a miracle on ice because I'm going to actually get on the ice for the first time. So,
all right,
12
Debi.
years.
Show them how it's done.
Shep is here with me, and we are going to test out my new skates. So, here we go. All right. And this is the man. We'll see. So here we have skates, which I haven't seen in 12 years. So these are not my custom skates because they're not ready yet, but Harley accommodated us so that I could get started because I really need to get a baseline here of what my skating level is. So we're gonna get these skates perfect so that I can optimize my skating ability. So here we go. Let's get these babies on and see what we can do. These are Harley stock boots that are nice and soft because breaking in skates can be a challenge, as you know. But because we're going to be doing figures, we actually want a nice soft boot. So we're going to see how these do. So you can see what I'm doing.
Miracle on ice right here, baby.
Here it comes.
Awesome.
I'm skating.
On the internet. Can you take us back to that time? How did this all come about?
Well, first of all, Shepard has been asking me for years to do this, and I've been saying no. I'm like, this is way too hard. Are you kidding me? And and then I actually started sort of paying attention to the event and watching some of my contemporaries who have competed in it before, and I started realizing something like that this was an art form that's really at risk of becoming extinct, to the point of where there's no human beings on the planet that can master figures and do them anywhere resembling what we used to do when we were competing. So I said, oh, okay. And it was a good time for me to kind of go in a different direction, doing something different. And so I said, okay, I'll come train with you. And I was, overweight, not paying attention to anything like that. So I had to, start getting disciplined and going on a, strict diet, or at least just not eating junk food. And yeah, I said, okay, we'll do this. And I also learned Shepard's passion, and his work with world art. You know, he really has a vision to do something very big for skating. And so the more I heard about that, the more I was like, yeah, we probably could do something really big with this. So here I am.
How does it feel? It'll come back really fast. And then step. Or just step. Just step out of it. There you go. Like, see? Wow. Look what Debi just... Amazing, Debi. Amazing. Great. The funny infant stance. Great story.
Whoa, I have a head rush. I don't know if
Whoa, that was a good one. Whoa.
This is the first time I'm meeting you, but I do have, Jenny and I started the skating lesson together, and we would occasionally get emails from you, and there was a man with jewels, and there was a cat and a Rolls Royce named Sonia Henie, and I didn't know what to make of this. And my coach, Yuri Symbolyuk, was talking about you as being one of the great figures skaters of all time, and he was writing about you on the black ice. So why are figures important to you, and why did you think it was so crucial to get Debi doing figures again?
Dave, what a great question. I've always said that skating attracts intelligent people, and I love what you're doing to document the history of skating and archive these conversations, these in-depth conversations with the icons. I've enjoyed your one with Dorothy recently. She's a very important person, and originally, when I had first heard about World Figure Sport Society, it was in 2015 when it was founded. And it's strangely enough, I had these dreams. I hadn't been competing for 10 years. Mm-hmm. I skated from 3 years old to 33 as an eligible skater. And I had these strange dreams where I was doing figures at an important event. And then I was like nervous doing like these paragraph double threes, and I'd wake up and I'm thinking, why am I dreaming about figures? It happened more than once. So when I got the invitation to come to Lake Placid and be there with Dick Button and Doug Wilson and the Protopopovs and all these people who came to support the mission, it was like I felt like I was supposed to do it, and it was extremely difficult. But Yuri Symbolyuk, I remember from my first Junior Worlds, and he was the man to beat. He was the reigning man coming in that year with Todd Eldridge and a big group of strong skaters that year. And I remember watching the Russian men on the first practice, and I want to say how appreciative I am of his comment, and I have mutual respect and appreciation for him.
さてこちらペトレンコかと思ったら違いまして、ユーリー・シンバリュック。雰囲気も衣装もそっくりなんですね。
ソビエトからは3名選手が出場してたんですけれども、3人ともみんな同じ。
But figures, I think it's really important that someone like Debi Thomas is involved, because Debi is not just an icon in the sport. She's the first person, male or female, from any nation on earth of color, to medal at the Winter Olympic Games. Therefore, her skates and dress are in the Smithsonian. She made cultural history, and much more. Debi is a two-time national champion, a world professional champion 3 times. an Olympic medalist who made history in a very unique way that still hasn't been repeated. And of all the people, I think in skating currently, Debi is the perfect unification of world professional legacy along with being a figure master. And I say that because the last time figures were in the Olympic Games was in Calgary in 1988, and Debi won 2 of the 3 figures. In fact, if you go on YouTube and you look up 1988 ladies short program and figures, you will see Debi's left forward paragraph loop, which is arguably the hardest figure of all. And she nails it on one line. It has to be one of the all-time greatest figures performed in competition. Dick and Peggy comment on it. It's superhuman.
The third and final figure was the left forward outside paragraph loop. Here the skater does 2 smaller loops inside each of the larger circles. The entire figure is skated on one foot and then repeated on the other foot. And of course, the important thing here is that those loops be kind of elongated and be clearly lined up and on axis with each other. It's a very difficult figure. Now you can see this loop figure is considerably smaller than the first 2 figures, and it takes even greater control. It was not to be Katarina's best figure.
Her loops were a little small in shape, and she dropped to 3rd place overall.
Once again, the judges moved in, and Katarina Witt skated to the edge of the rink to join her coach, Udo Muller. They have a very special relationship. And then it was Debi Thomas's turn. She was in 3rd place coming into the final figure.
The pressure was really on. This is a figure that really takes nerves of steel. It's a very small figure. The judges stand very close, and the tracing is so small. She did an excellent job. Very solid figure, very even, solid flow throughout this whole loop figure.
Those edges were wonderfully steady, weren't they? Look at the swing and the change of edge right there.
And just an excellent tracing, very close, very neat.
She won that figure as she had won the 2nd figure, and it moved her into 2nd place overall.
And now if you go on my Instagram tomorrow, it'll be, I just made a funny video about that and I put that in there.
I just watched it before we were logging on, and I want to ask you about that in a little bit. I want to ask you about figures as an art form, because there's so much talk about mental health in skating, right? And if I think about figures, edges, and things like that, there's almost a meditative quality to it. The mind-body connection, this mindfulness. What did training figures mean for you as a skater in terms of training that mind-body connection?
I'd love to answer this. I'm sure Debi will have something to say. As a child, my figures were terrible. I did gymnastics as a child. I could free skate. I was trying triples as a young boy. But my figures were absolutely awful. And I was stopped on my tests as a little child. I almost quit because of them. Eventually, I began to draw them on paper. And at 12, I moved to train with Don Laws and Scott Hamilton in Denver. Then I went on to Carlo and Krista Fassi in Colorado Springs. Figures require 2 things. Tremendous, that you have to learn to fall in love with them, and thousands and thousands of repetitions. You do have to go into kind of a Zen state. And then there's a second skill you have to master them is when you're nervous, under pressure, on blank ice, you have to have the faith and the fortitude mentally to trust yourself and do what you know how to do under pressure. It is like trying to trace a 1 to 2 millimeter line with those kind of proportions it's again superhuman.
Yeah. I mean, well, it's funny because coming back and doing them now, I don't think I realized what a superhuman skill doing figures is. And I have this joke going, some of the kids at the rink who are going to be doing the championships, they came and they're like, how do I do these? And, I said, well, we're going to get to the point of where artificial intelligence robots are going to be the only,
Right.
only thing that can do figures.
They probably can't even do it.
Well, I know I asked ChatGPT last night about making, you know, I said, how would you go about making a robot that could do compulsory figures? And it was like, that would be extremely difficult and possibly not possible. So yeah, I would love to challenge a robotics company to make a bot that can actually do figures, because I'm worried. I'm seriously worried that we will get to a point where there's no humans that can do this art form. And you know, I think back and I'm like, I don't know how we did these. But yes, we skated 4 hours a day doing figures. That's one of the reasons we were able to do it. But you know, now it's like just, you know, holding an edge and
We were also
not
teenagers.
scraping or skidding or like they have a rule in World Figure that you can't swear. It's called the Christian Hendricks rule. And I'm, you know, I don't know what I'm gonna do because I don't know how many points off you get, but yes, when you're trying to concentrate and balance, and yeah, it's really superhuman.
Well, I was speaking with Dorothy Hamill last week, and we were talking about different skaters, and she was talking about people's figures. And what I got from her is that there's a sense between skaters talking about people who did figures like this work of art, like a Rembrandt or a Van Gogh or something like that, when she was talking about Peggy Fleming or Trixi Schuba's figures or someone. And I was wondering, for the two of you coming up, was there anyone who did figures that you just absolutely idolized and admired and were really inspired to kind of replicate?
I have to say, as a youth,
Mhm.
I heard about Trixi Schuba, but I'd never seen her. They called her the human scribe, and that was the piece of equipment we used to use to draw circles to practice. And she was like this mythical character. So when I arrived in Lake Placid, you know, I'm in my 40s, I'm in my 50s now, but when I arrived for the first World Figure Championships, she was at the reception. I'd never met her, and I was like gobsmacked. I was staggered by her presence, and she was very, very nice. Austrian woman who's very much into art and has an art exhibit at her home in Vienna. And I got to know someone that as a child was almost like a mythical character. And truly, I think there was testing done on her because she had an ability in figure skating that you ask anyone who had the greatest figures of all time, and they'll immediately say Trixi Schuba. I'm not sure.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
mean, yeah,
I really don't know why.
What did she do?
Another honorable mention would be Priscilla Hill. And
Yeah.
I don't know if I ever saw Priscilla's figures, but you would hear about them. You know, she was an incredible figure skater as well.
Well, Shepard, I wanted to ask you about Trixi's figures. Can you explain to someone who doesn't know figures now, why was Trixi so good at these? What did she do that was so incredible?
Trixi Schuba zeigt uns einen Vorwärts-Doppeldreierparagraph. Das ist eine der vielen Pflichtfiguren, die ja Trixis Stärke sind. Und gerade die Pflicht sieht der Fernseher ja nie. Es wird darüber zwar viel gesprochen, aber gezeigt werden ja immer nur die Kürfiguren. Und so haben wir jetzt die Gelegenheit ergriffen, Ihnen einmal zu zeigen, wie schön Trixi ihre Pflichtfiguren zeichnet. Bei dem Gegendreierparagraph zum Beispiel werden die Kreise 6-mal gelaufen, weil es eine Doppelfigur ist. Es wird einmal auswärts, einmal einwärts begonnen, im Gegensatz zu anderen Figuren, zum Beispiel Wenden und Gegenwenden, die werden nur 3-mal gelaufen. Jetzt wird die Figur das 2. Mal begonnen. Passen Sie auf den Abstoß auf, ganz genau mit der Kante. Jetzt kommt sie zum ersten Gegendreier, sehr schön gewendet. Trixi hat eine wunderbare Spannung, sodass der Kantenwechsel eben nicht kommt. Er muss genau gewechselt werden, von auswärts auf einwärts. Und wenn sie die Spannung eben nicht genau hat, hat sie nach der Wendung einen Geigler, wie man so schön sagt, also einen Wackler. Und das ist natürlich schlecht. Bei Trixi ist das nicht. Sie spannt sehr schön vor und nun steht sie ganz ruhig am Schlittschuh. Ein ganz kurzer Übergang. Je kürzer der Übergang ist, desto besser, weil ja die Kreise dadurch runder werden. Wesentlich bei dem Paragraph ist natürlich, dass die Achse stimmt. Die beiden Gegendreier müssen genau vis-à-vis sein. Die Kreise müssen rund sein und die Tangenten müssen stimmen. Ich weiß nicht, ob man das jetzt genau erkennen kann. Zum Beispiel hier ist der Gegendreier genau auf der Spitze des Dreiers. Es ist kein flacher Punkt, wie es manche Läufer eben machen, weil sie eben die Pflichtfigur nicht so beherrschen. Dadurch wird diese Stelle sehr flach. Das ist bei Trixi nicht. Bei ihr sind die Kreise vollständig rund. So, danke. Vielleicht, wenn Sie so lieb wären.
To give you an idea, proportionally, in skating in the old judging system, the 6.0 was originated with the 6 tracings of a figure. And Trixi, we would see in free skating 5.8, 5.9, 6.0 rarely, but we'd see them, those marks. Now, a world championship figure, a world champion, would typically score from about 3.8 to 4.2, probably sometimes into the 4 range on a figure. But someone who could score a 5.0 or higher was almost unheard of. It did happen. I never heard of anyone getting a 6 or even a high 5. Figures have so many errors. So it's basically a test of who has the fewest errors, who has the most control of nerves under pressure, who's done their homework and can keep it together under pressure. There are 2 skills, the training, the repetitions, and the control of one's nerves.
I used to hum the Looney Tunes thing to keep me keep my rhythm.
Yeah, I'm interested about that because in Scott Hamilton's book, he talked about singing songs to himself, like rock songs, as he was doing the figures. So you really did do the Looney
Tunes. Yeah,
Great
work.
As you were doing this figure, Shepard is revisiting in his dreams at night. You're humming the Looney Tunes to yourself as Shepard is like, oh my goodness, that's incredible.
Really?
Yeah.
Right.
But it's so funny that you talk about these scores because I think as skaters we're so trained to know what a good mark is. How do you train yourself to withstand when you know that 4.0 is coming in figures, or to change your perspective to know like this is a good score today? Because the first time you take a moves in the field test, when you see the numbers that come out and it's like 1.5, you're like, oh my goodness, like I should quit. Like, yeah.
When I was young, I got 1s as a child. My figures were like, they were so bad that there was a rule back in the day where if you skated a figure on a test and it didn't meet a minimum mark, the skater was asked to leave the ice and couldn't continue the test. It was like the ultimate failure that one could experience. And I remember as a little child, my coach standing by the barrier holding her cup of coffee, freaking out as the judges were coming over to talk to her and stop the test. And I didn't really know what was going on. Figures were not my thing as a child, but I could free skate, and I moved and I skated. I got to see Scott Hamilton's figures, and at the Olympic Games, he won all 3 of the figures that year. And that was the reason why he held his lead after the short and long program and won the gold. So I got to see what figures could be. And when I got to Denver to work with Don Laws, I was 12 years old. And I remember thinking to myself, to be out here with many of the great skaters of the world in Denver, I have to make my figures as good or better than these. And so I think drawing them using an art training technique on paper helped tremendously. And then eventually I worked with Carlo and Carlo Fassi, who really appreciated my figures and walk over to me when I wasn't their student, but they would nod and they'd like smile. And that made me feel so great. because of all the trouble I had as a child. I mean, it was just traumatizing in a way. I loved skating, but that was traumatizing.
Why were Carlo and Krista Fassi so good at teaching the figures?
I think they come from a history of skating where the figures, if you didn't have strong figures, the judges wouldn't take you seriously in the free skating, because years ago, if you weren't respected for your figures, because it is figure skating, they wouldn't give you the marks in the free skating if you weren't in the top. And in America, they knew that figure skating, there was kind of a way that championships were won at the international level, and that was to have strong figures, have a lead in the figures, an insurmountable lead, hopefully. And that's how things were up until about the early 70s. And then it started changing because the short program was brought in. And then eventually the figures were phased out over about a couple of decades.
Well, Debi, if I think of you as a trailblazer, I would imagine that you had to be better than everyone else by a country mile coming up. So I am wondering, how did you get so good at the figures?
Well, McGowan actually literally held us in the positions. And, you know, I had terrible figures when I first went to Alex McGowan as well. I remember my first figure lesson with him, and he would do this thing, you know, if you were going off your tracing, he would take your glove and put it down over where you were going off the tracing. So he's like, give me your gloves, you know, and he puts them down. Then he's like, Lisa Costa, give me your gloves. Corey Long, give me your gloves. Danny Goley, give me your gloves. Hillary Hasty, go get the lost and found box, you know. I was mortified, you know. I cried to my mom. I'm like, he put gloves around my circle. And yeah, I mean, it was, you know, he was very good at teaching figures and technical things. And yeah, he used to literally hold us in the positions. You know, and it was funny because I would be like at senior and I'm like, you know, he's still holding me in the positions, you know, but it worked. It worked. So I can't, that, you know, I've been thinking about how we can teach the next generation how to do figures in an accelerated way, because you know, it's not feasible for people to spend 4 hours a day on figures. You can't get figure blades anymore and things like that. So but you know, Shepard can do figures really well even in free skates, so we know possible.
Skating in the 90s was as huge as it was. You know, obviously those skaters had been trained on compulsory figures and they had the freedom as well as the showmanship to really be able to perform. How crucial were the figures in developing those skills that gave people the glide and really that freedom that we, you know, saw during skating's heyday?
I'd have to say that the mental fortitude that they brought, looking at a bunch of adults early in the morning with clipboards who couldn't smile, it was a thing. It was a cultural thing that we grew up with, and terrifying. And I think that when one learns to overcome that, I remember as a child, I was about 10 years old, and I kept failing these tests. And so I said, okay, I'm going to go out and show my long axis. I'm going to stand there, and I'm going to take an awkward amount of time, and I'm going to control the time. I'm not going to be rushed. This is my time, and they have to wait for me. So I made a decision that I would stand there and I would sort of shift the energy into and make myself feel like, okay, I'm in control, and breathe and bend my knees and make them wait for me. Very much like there's certain skaters who would go from the barrier and they would calm themselves down, certain skaters that we both know and are friends with. And
wait, so you were the original Oksana waiting until you were to go?
I laughed when I saw her do that because I love Oksana. Oksana is one of the all-time great skaters. And she used a technique of taking control of the time and coming out and skating when she's ready. And I thought it was brilliant.
And here she is, tiny waif of a thing. She's got those fawn eyes, Oksana Bayul of Ukraine. On the ice, representing Ukraine, Oksana Bayul. You will always see a pause here, even after her name is called. She says she has to wait for her skates to tell her it's time to go.
It reminded me of when I was a child, and I just I think back on how in retrospect, like how difficult these are. I don't know how I did what I did, but I'm so happy today to come from an art legacy in my family of about 100 years to be able to, this is fine art on a crystal stage, using your entire body. Skating is fine, performing, decorative, and recording art all in one activity. So you could make an argument that it's the most comprehensively artistic activity on earth. And the figures are the foundation. It's the namesake. It's the first Winter Olympics sport, and it goes back hundreds of years. So skating is very special, and I've been working on packaging it, and figures are a requisite skill that everyone can learn, and it will help their body's movement fundamentally and give them the balance of a cat.
Yeah.
In '88, Brian Boitano skated a program that was based in the compulsory figures. What do you see in that program that maybe the average person misses when they watch it today?
That was genius. I think it was Sandra
Bezic, yeah.
Bezic did it, yeah. That program was one of my all-time favorites because it took the culture of skating, the costume, the music, and presented to a contemporary audience something extremely classic. I mean, if there ever was a 6.0 short program, it was that one.
Program was superb technically, but the great thing about it was its point of view, the 19th century moves, the quality of the choreography, and interestingly, the judges gave it the 6s for artistic merit or presentation, not for his usual great area of technical merit, which indeed was superb also.
No, you are very adamant, Shepard, that we are in the middle of movement. This is the World Artistic Skating Movement, and I was wondering if you could both talk a little bit about, what that is.
The world art movement, I like to call the movement art movement, because skating on ice, on bone skates, is believed to be the oldest form of human-powered transportation on a piece of equipment. It goes back over 5,000 years, according to experts. And I got to try to skate on actual bone skates once, and it was kind of scary. I had a couple of poles to help me stabilize myself. But that's a movement. Skating, it was about transportation, it was about survival, and then it became about socializing and courting and eventually competition. So now skating transports us through the arts. And my objective has been to place skating in the center of something larger than itself, to package skating as the most comprehensively artistic activity on earth that unites the Olympics, Hollywood, and the arts like nothing else.
So you've spent a lot of time today talking about how important figures were for everything. And I want to ask what you see in progress, because obviously people know that Debi has had struggles in life, as we all have, but you've been able to witness and motivate and encourage her to come back into figures and use this almost maybe as like a metaphor in life to be coming back. What are you seeing from watching Debi work on the figures day to day, week to week?
Debi, She's trying to do them on my loops. Uh-oh. This is... That's good. No. You just need to get in the zone. That was excellent. You still got that one-line thing going on. You got it. You still got it, baby. You still got it. That was good. Just get warmed up. Get in the zone. Pull. Nice ride back. Shape. Awesome. Look at that. Amazing, Debbie. Good shape. Hold it. Amazing.
What a wonderful question. When I see Debbie skating next to me on the ice, I see first a friend for whom I have great respect, a highly intelligent individual whose accomplishments, speak for themselves, and being an orthopedic surgeon on top of everything else, and the degree in engineering, so many things. But Debbie is a very conscientious, loyal, and disciplined, focused individual, almost more than I've ever seen in anyone else. And that I can see that's how her figures became so brilliant. As a child, when I watched Debbie skate, I remember an interview she did, and she skated to Relax by Frankie Goes to Hollywood, a fun piece of music, which I stole and had great success with in 94-95 season. I also liked the sort of unitard, the long, sleek look, and I found this wonderful material, and I sort of, in my own way, copied that. So Debbie was very influential, and someone with whom I kept contact. And when I'd heard that there were struggles, I thought, no, this is someone I'll do whatever I can to bless and edify. And as I thought about it, I realized, my goodness, Debbie is the absolute definition, the quintessence, the zenith of skating's figure and world professional legacy culture combined. She's also, being African American, really fits into the endeavor to diversify the skating family. And one of our objectives in the world art movement is to put skating in the center of the arts as the star art culture, and to reach out. Let's see, there are 8 billion people in the world. Why not another billion skating fans? And people from countries like Syria and countries like India and Malaysia and Brazil. I skate with skaters from Kyrgyzstan every day. All of those countries skate at our rink. So we are looking to expand the popularity of skating as the Olympic culture and the Hollywood culture and the arts, all in a concentrated space to popularize skating to new places.
Well, Debbie, you have been to medical school, you've been to the Olympics, you went to Stanford. What is it like, and how does it compare coming back at this age, doing the figures, getting yourself into shape again? What is this experience like, and where does it rank in your life?
Well, where does it rank? Gosh, I
probably, in the mountains of challenges that you have,
the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, and I've done really hard things in life. So yes, it is definitely one of the, like when I was a surgeon, and I was training, I worked like 100 hours a week, and it was crazy, but I knew, I'm good at surgery. Mm-hmm. This, I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. I really don't. I did do a layout, the other day that was, I would take that, but it wasn't in my, I have very high standards. So I'm like, this is not good, and it's, I know when I put this video out that I just finished making, people are going to be like, that looks good to me, but I used to be able to trace these things one line, Shepard still can trace things one line. But this is up there with, hardest things I've ever done. So, in a way, it's like, it's satisfying because I know I'm going to get through it. I know that I'll be you know.
I guess, how invigorating is it? Do you find yourself excited to get up and get that figure back on one line more than you did the day before?
I honestly don't think I'm going to get my old figures back. I mean, and that's really, I guess that kind of brings me to where I am now, because I agree with Shepard that figure skating needs a boost. It needs to be the prestige sport that it once was. And but we're living in a different world. You know, the world is becoming more technologically oriented, and the way people take in arts and entertainment is changing. I'm somebody who pays very close attention to what's going on in the world economically and technologically and things like that. So, you know, it's funny. They actually did have some robots that skated. And Paulina Edmonds actually is a spokesperson for an organization in Silicon Valley that, you know, they were trying to bring attention and get funding to get more rinks back in the Bay Area, which is where I grew up skating. And so so I did actually message her last night, because I have this idea to do a very interesting documentary leading up to next year's World Figure and Fancy Skating, because next year is the 10th anniversary of the championships, and it's also the 100th year anniversary of the Winter Olympics. So it's a really big deal. And I really feel like we have to get this championship is meant to honor the world's greatest skating artists. And as Shepard explained, fine, performing, decorative, and recording art. So the figures is the fine art part of it. And the more and more I think about this, the more I realize, yes, this is an art form that can be lost. We need to figure out a way to make it cool, make it something that people want to do, make it interesting. So, you know, I have been researching a lot of things. You know, with artificial intelligence, we're going to be able to make movies and things like that easier. We're able to do cool things with virtual environments and things like that. So doing productions that are visually appealing and doing things interesting, maybe with figures, is a way to sort of bring a whole new look to the art of figures.
I have something to add on that. I'm so glad you mentioned, Debbie. I think the application of technology to skating, to bring it into the 21st century is critical. I think that packaging the culture of skating as a star art culture, being in the center of the art world, is a critical element. I think that distinguishing skating as the crystal stage and the jeweled sport, where we dance on a crystal, wear jeweled costumes, and compete for gold, I think is important. And of course, we have, conveniently enough, one of the great icons of world history, a person whose life was so extraordinary that, statistically speaking, should never have existed. That's Sonia Henie. She was born in the biggest snowstorm in Oslo's history, April 8th of 1912. Her theme color was white. She said, "My skate should reflect where I'm from. I come from the land of ice and snow." So she was the first skater to wear white skates. So we have this fantastic legacy. Sonia Henie was the person who united the Olympics, Hollywood, and the arts. Some people even believe that Sonia Henie was the world's first superstar. because media in Hollywood's golden era, the Olympics was global. Hollywood was becoming much more global at that time in the 30s. And then Sonia Henie founded an art museum, a modern art museum in Oslo. So she was successful in the Olympics, Hollywood, and the arts in a way that really no one else in history has been. She was 11 at her first Winter Olympic Games in 1924, and there's a huge monument to her in Lake Placid, right outside the 1932 ring. So one time when I was there, I said, why is Sonia Henie singled out? Of all the famous people who've been through here and the Miracle on Ice, why Sonia? And they said, you didn't know? I said, no, I've skated my entire life. And what was explained to me was that during the Great Depression, I had heard that during the Great Depression, the International Olympic Committee decided they were not going to hold another Winter Olympic Games, that it would just be the Summer Olympics. And by that time, Sonia Henie, from 1924, 1928, now on her third Olympics, 1932, she was so famous as a teenager that people poured into Lake Placid just to see her, and she made the Olympic Games economically viable. That's the story I was told. So it really does make sense for her to be singled out, and that we have this convenient legend, this legacy that we can build upon. And I believe that we need to use, because the competitive skating is one thing, and it's become very age compressed, and it's phenomenal what the skaters are doing. I love it. It's amazing to see, but there has to be a way to participate for a lifetime, and there are ways to bring other countries in reasonably, and to bring the skaters bringing themselves at their best to the crystal stage.
Well, I think Dick Button did such a great job of presenting figure skating as a crystal stage. I think of as a kid watching the World Professional Championships, and it had the black curtain and the announcer and the lighting, and it just made it seem like this grand event. Can you talk a little bit about Dick's figures? What, Dick is the primary, authority on figure skating in every which way. How good were his figures?
I have many Dick Button stories. I love Dick Button as a person and as a skater, and there are pictures of him skating the figures. His figures were excellent from what I understand and from images that I've seen. I remember I took from his ex-wife for several years, who taught Janet Lynn. She was fabulous. Slavka Kahut, she was fabulous to work with, so wise. Dick is very special because without him, he really took the Sonia Henie legacy and built upon it. And now I believe he's 93 or 94, and he's not able to come to the World Figure and Fancy Skating Championships. But I remember my first year, the first morning of the first figure, not having skated figures in competition for 26 years. I was on the ice, and it was a very difficult Olympic level figure, a right forward paragraph double 3. And I showed my long axis. I lifted my left arm, I lifted my right arm, and right on my fingertips was Dick Button in the stands, sitting right there by my patch. I said, Jesus, I'm going to need you to hold my hand on this one. I was so nervous. I mean, on top of not having done figures for a quarter of a century, and doing a very difficult figure, he was there. I ended up winning that figure by some miracle, and that was my introduction into sort of the second half of my skating career. And I'm glad that you mentioned Dick Button, because it really is, without him, a lot of what we have today wouldn't exist.
And in 1948, this fellow won it, Dick Button of Englewood, New Jersey. Now in 1952, he was still the master. And he won it again, a gold medal for the USA, another Grogan second, and then it was so dark we couldn't really see it. So we asked Dick if he'd do it over again next morning for the audiences that would see the film, and he kind of consented, and now you can see Dick Button going through his routine that brought him the Olympic championship. Let's take a look. shirt and sweater seemed to balloon out as if by centrifugal force. And then we put on skates ourselves and went out on the rink after him to catch the rhythm and motion of his free flight over the ice. So no wonder Dick is many times national champion and twice Olympic champion, and a great guy to boot, Dick Button, USA.
Ask you, Shepard, one thing, because you might know this, and this is part of my childhood and whatnot, but I learned how to skate at the Fritz Dietl rink in Westwood, and he skated with Sonia Henie in the ice shows and on stilts, and he had long since passed when I really started skating, but I was coming back from a really hard time in my life. I was going back to school, and I would speak with his wife, his late wife, every single day, who's sadly no longer with us. But she would talk about Sonia, and she would talk about Fritz, making them go to the World Championships, and he would watch every single figure. So do you know a little bit about his history and his skating with Sonia at all?
Not so much of that, but I have studied, I'm an art historian who specializes in treasure history and jewels. Yeah, and I love the connection between, the fact that Sonia gave people an authentic experience. I heard that almost all of her shows throughout her career sold out because it was the only time that the average person could interface with an A-list Hollywood star and Olympic champion. So they were a family, the Henies were a family of furriers. They made paintbrushes and fur coats. And Sonia would arrive and she'd have an ermine and she would descend from up above and she would wear real jewels, sometimes millions of dollars worth of diamonds. And she gave people an authentic experience. I don't know if there are comparisons in entertainment, sports and entertainment, anyone's since or before or after her who's done the same thing. I think that legacy, we need to use it. We need to perpetuate it. And that's what Debbie and I do. I have a car that we arrive at events in. It's white, and we call her Sonia. So it's a roll.
This car,
yeah, it's a Rolls Royce. Yes, I've had a couple of them, and this one is in tribute to Sonia arriving at practice. She used to arrive. Frank Carroll tells a story of seeing her arrive with two Norwegian elk hounds in yellow chiffon with a yellow canary diamond, and you knew that you were in the presence of a star, a real star. And I think, again, we have a legacy that's fun and to package this culture for the world.
Mm-hmm. Well, how humble was Debbie being about her figures before? Because I think of you two driving to practice in this Rolls Royce. Shepard, tell us, how's Debbie doing? Where are her figures? Where do you see them?
I'm so glad you asked, because the truth is that in the 10 years of World Figure Championships, no one has the fundamental skills and the shapes, the general shapes and the control and like when I see Debbie skate beside me, I have to be on my game. I have to keep improving. She pushes me.
She's very competitive.
She knows what she's doing very clearly. Her figures are actually beautiful. And I love skating next to her because she really pushes me. And I must say that her fancy and her like free skating is extremely impressive. I've seen her do some spins recently and some axles, and she has some it's really impressive, the shapes, and she's doing better than she says.
So break it down for this competition. What does Debbie have to master? Like, what is she doing? And are you competing as well?
I am.
Do you think I would do this and he gets out of it? No.
I don't think so, but he's very convincing, I mean,
no, I said, because
I want to ride in Sonia Henie. Listen,
about retiring, and I said, there's no way you're getting me to do this and you're retiring. That's not happening.
I wasn't going to skate this season. I was done. I did a couple of exhibitions in Lake Placid earlier this year, and I came off, I'm 52. I'll be 53 in March. And I came off the ice. I said, Shep, I just can't do this anymore. And Debbie said, I'm not skating unless you compete with me. So I've been pushing. I had a heart attack about 3 years ago, and I almost died before my mother did. I've had some challenges physiologically, but I mean, praise God, I'm still alive. And being with this very good friend, and we're very realistic and very reasonable about how we build a mountain out of onion skin layers, little steps at a time. So Debbie really pushes me, and her figures look beautiful. And to know that this is the last master of figures coming back, true master of figures coming back to help perpetuate the namesake of the sport. It goes back hundreds of years. Here she is, and she's made cultural history, and she's a part of the world professional legacy. She's the perfect person, and I'm so blessed and honored to have such a good friend and amazing skater come and train with me.
So now you compete there, and I believe, has Gary Beacom competed there as well?
He has. The second year it was in Toronto, and he did a great job. He's very, I guess, famous for his special figure, his creative figure.
In the knee and the ankle. He really has to press into the ankle and into the blade on the ice. Wonderful job.
And never putting his foot down.
That's right. He knows exactly, where he needs to skate each loop pattern. Absolutely wonderful. This is the level of which, the whole World Figure Sports Society and the World Figure Championship is striving to achieve with all of its skaters and skating history.
And great appreciation from the crowd.
Yes, yes. And we got to congratulate the skaters. They've completed the 4th round of the World Figure Championship.
Which he laid out at the end. It took him all of the 5 minutes to skate it. His legs were shaking, but he managed to hold it together. And what's exciting about the figures is if your other foot touches down, you're on one foot, and if the other foot touches down even slightly, you plummet by places, not by tenths. Figures are nail biting because you must maintain control and not put your foot down or fall. So the same aesthetic is applied to the fancy skating. The event is called the World Figure and Fancy Skating Championships, based upon an 1895 book by the Canadian George Meagher. He was a world pro champion in the late 1800s. He introduced hockey to Europe, and he wrote 3 books. So this one book, Figures and Fancy Skating, is the namesake of the championships. So it really is a nod to the history of skating at its very beginnings, and very largely Canadian influenced, with the Kelly family of Canada and the US being the most accomplished skating dynasty in history, who founded the competition with Dick Button, with Doug Wilson of ABC, and Janet Lynn and Trixi Schuba. The Proto-Popovs were there the first year. I mean, the list was unbelievable. You couldn't assemble these people today. So the competition is extraordinary, because we do perform these figures like the Pannon, which won the Olympics in 1908. In the Summer Olympics, ice skate figures were the first Winter Olympic sport ever exhibited. So it was like a competition where Nikolai Pannon demonstrated this beautiful figure that Mark Fenzak knows how to do. So we brought back some of the figures from the 1800s, which are extremely hard. Some of the figures Gillis Grafstrom performed, and Ulrich Salchow and Carl Schaefer. I have tremendous respect for these gentlemen having to learn the Swiss counter S. Extremely difficult. I don't know how they did it, but it's combined with the artistic fancy skating, in my opinion, makes it a complete skating championships.
It's so interesting that Gary is there. One of my coaches, Alexei Beletsky, Gary is one of just his idols. And there's a video of Gary, I think, doing a spin with like 100 revolutions in a row.
He taught us new ways to skate. He showed us there are other ways to skate, which was phenomenal. He's also a genius.
So between how many figures will you both compete in at this event? I'm sorry?
6. There are 5 figures that are prescribed.
Mhm.
And then there is one creative figure that we invent. And there are certain rules around that. Just like back in the day, you could introduce a figure and the judges know how to sort that out. And then finally, the fancy skating, where we have up to 5 minutes. You could skate for less. And the judges judge with the figure aesthetic because the ice is black.
Mhm.
They can see the lines, they can see the integrity and the control of the edges. So if you do a loop or if you do a rocker, it's almost like doing a difficult jump. So in spotlights, on black ice, when you perform these shapes and patterns with the jumps, with the spins and the spirals and the spread eagles, they want to see moving sculpture. They want to see John Curry. They do not want to see the hand go down. They do not want to see balance checks. And heaven forbid if you fall. Because if there are any mistakes, you get deducted by places, not by tenths. So
we're watching the left forward inside multis cross here. Shepard Clark, left forward inside edge, left back inside edge, left forward inside edge. That's cross cut number 1. Here's cross cut number 2. Left forward inside edge, left back inside edge, left forward inside edge. That was cross cut 3. Here's cross cut number 4. Unbelievable skating here. They're the championship men, and there's Matthew Schneider, Brendan Griffith. They're taking a minor reprieve before they go back in. The skaters must complete 6 compositions of the entire pattern. There's 1, there's 2. This is Mark Fenzak. The tops could be a little more precise. Back inside edge, forward inside edge. That's his 3rd cross cut. Here's his 4th cross cut. Great job. And now on the ice with the skaters are not the judges. Those are the championship referees, including Dorothy Hamill on the ice there with Brendan Griffiths. And I believe this is Shepard Clark coming back in for his final pattern here, finishing the composition of the multis cross. Here we go. Left forward inside edge, left back inside edge, left forward inside edge. That's cross cut number 1. Here's cross cut number 2. This is incredibly difficult. Cross cut number 3. And to see this skated like this, cross cut number 4. At the World Championship, what an incredible multis cross on the ice.
So it is a nail-biting competition in that way. They want perfection.
So you mentioned about how there, Debbie, about how there aren't a lot of people left who have done the figures. Who's judging the event then? Because obviously there's a certain sophistication that it would take to judge this event.
Right. Well, traditionally it's been the icons of skating judging the event.
Mm. Okay.
So yeah.
Dorothy.
Yeah, I mean,
Don Jackson.
We haven't had
Tim Wood.
Yeah, go ahead.
Janet Lynn. I mean, it's like Tommy Litz, BB Zilmer Moritz. We have the first year it was just we've had JoJo Starbuck. We had Sandra Bezic.
Mm-hmm.
We had I'm trying to think, there's just so many of them that as children I look at and I mean, my gosh, these people are in one space. Getting these people together is extraordinary today. And now we're kind of entering into a time where we're seeing a new generation come into those positions of evaluation. I hope to be able to step into their shoes and help this next generation come up and take the reins and be the new champions. We're looking for the next generation. That's one of the reasons why Debbie and I are doing it. We're in our 50s and we're ready to go on to a more administrative position. And we're looking for those great skating artists who deserve to be recognized on a world stage.
Well, who's the tough judge amongst these legends? Because, I took lessons from JoJo and she's so wonderful. And she's like just a fairy godmother that comes down from earth. And yet she has a gentle way of pushing you and getting her opinion across.
She's wonderful. I've worked with JoJo. She's fantastic.
So have your necklace up, your arms, smile, show your confidence. Okay. Present, head up. Very good. Head up, smile, very nice. Look at me and smile, let me see. Very nice. Think of all these things. You're gonna be down in your knees, squeezing your waist, show your necklace, lean against the wall, remember the pole, and hug the tree. The arms can be a little lower than your shoulder. You don't have to go fast. Just be gorgeous. You can even slow it down. Just be gorgeous. Keep the roundness. Don't
Travel arrangements paid through and a promotional fee paid by United Airlines. United flies more people to Hawaii than any other airline. Nobody knows Hawaii like United.
Fantastic. I'd say Don Jackson is a purist and a traditionalist. Don Jackson. Dorothy is actually has amazing standards, and to be judged by her is a huge honor. I think that when you're in front of people like Janet Lynn and Sandra Bezic, and Tim Wood, who had fantastic figures, the standards are extremely, extremely high. And even though it's an intimidating experience to come back in one's 40s and 50s and skate in front of these people, there is something healing and fulfilling and extraordinary and wonderful about it. And I think that in all of skating, there really isn't anything quite like it.
Debbie, how nervous are you?
Well, luckily, I don't have an ego, so I'm just, all I can do is do the best that I can do and try not to swear. Because but Shepard is really competitive. Like, he will be nervous, I know it. But I'll probably be nervous because when I'm doing like loops on practice, I mean, I can't lay down a loop, like a regular just loop. It's like, if I go on a piece of completely blank ice with no lines or anything, I mean, it's really hard to just make a loop. And I'll go and, I'll be rocking on my rocker and come to a stop or skid or something like that. And, and it's impossible to not be like, and so yeah, but here I will say this, the black ice is much better ice than what we're used to practicing on. So I'm pretty sure that when I go, it's actually going to be easier than our day-to-day practice, because the ice is really hard in our rink. And so, yeah, I either scrape or I skid, or it's not like just a nice edge, but on the black ice, it's really,
they developed
perfect,
the smoothest, fastest ice in the world in Lake Placid. The Kellys did. So as a skater, I tell friends of mine, you got to get there. They always invite people at the end to come onto the ice and skate, to try it out, because it's only there for about a week. Then they take it out.
Well, Shepard, I want to ask you and Debbie to really walk me through this competition in '88 at the Olympics, because you undersold it a little bit when you were just talking about, Debbie's figure, because I think you have to put in context the people who were competing at this event in the figures are some of the great figure skaters of all time. You had Kira Ivanova, whose first figure was extremely strong. You had Karen Kadavi and Jill, who were both beautiful at the figures. You have Liz Manley, and you have Katarina Witt, whose figures are debated, right? So can you kind of walk me through?
Well, the battle began this morning at 8 a.m. Katarina was the first skater to compete in the first of 3 school figures. In their last 2 World Championship meetings, Debbie has finished ahead of Katarina in this quiet part of the competition. All morning and most of the afternoon, the tension continued. 3 figures, all precise and difficult. Consider the first figure with Dick Button.
The first figure was the counter, the left forward inside counter. This figure has 3 large circles with 2 turns connecting the 3 circles. It's here that the skater pushes off backward, makes a turn, and then finally completes the 3rd circle. It is important that the circles be equal in size, round, skated with firm edges, and lined up on axis. This was Kira Ivanova of the Soviet Union as she skated her figure. Right here, she stepped onto a forward inside edge and approached the turn. Now watch very carefully. Right here, you will see her tracings. They weren't as close as they could have been. Despite some flaws in her tracings, the judges felt her counter turns and the shape and size of her circles were superior to the others. Ivanova took the lead after the first figure and never relinquished it throughout the compulsory figure competition.
Jill Trenary of the United States did not get off to a good start on her first figure. It was reminiscent of her disastrous first figure last year at the 1987 World Championships, where she came in 12th. In this first figure, she placed 9th, but dramatically improved her position in the later figures. Still to come, Katarina Witt and Debi Thomas. Karen Kadavi was in 3rd place after the first compulsory figure. The second figure was the paragraph bracket, the right back outside bracket change bracket. The skater does a turn at the top of the first circle, a change of edge, and a similar second circle. The entire figure was skated on one foot, and here it is repeated on the other foot. The important points in this figure are the 2 turns and the change of edge that occurs where the circles connect. This was Karen Kadavi doing the second bracket turn in this figure. Peggy Fleming and I watched these figures. They took all day long.
Karen had trouble with this figure, keeping that steady edge. You can see right there, she bobbled quite a bit. She got extremely nervous during the school figures.
The overall figure was not her best, and after 2 figures, she dropped to 4th place overall. Now, after the first figure, Debi Thomas was in 4th place, but on this figure, she was superb. She skated a strong, rock-solid figure with good body position. Now, as she pushes off here, watch how she looked ahead of herself to see where the turn was so that she could trace it.
Well, the judges looked for the lineup of the turns. Were they on axis? And were the circles lined up? Were they even? Did she have even flow throughout this figure?
A figure like this requires steel-like nerves and perfect balance. They're very difficult. While the judges moved in to mark the figure, Debi skated over to confer with her coach, Alex McGowan. She won the figure, and it moved her into 3rd place overall. Now, Katarina Witt of East Germany was 2nd after the first figure.
Katarina's school figures have never been a strong point in the past, but this year she seems to have improved. I noticed from a distance her circles looked a little small for her size. And look how slow she's going throughout this figure. The flow of this figure was really lacking.
Katarina Witt remained in 2nd place after the second figure. Now, recently, there have been a lot of questions about the future of compulsory figures in Olympic and international competition.
Compulsory figures have long been a mystery. Why spend 3 or 4 hours a day trying to perfect these designs on the ice? Well, it's a question that the International Skating Union, the governing body, is finally asking. So they've come up with a proposal to eliminate compulsory figures from world and Olympic competition. Why? Well, they take up a great deal of training time, especially in the morning, which conflicts with school. They're very costly for the ISU to run at competitions. They're not exactly what you'd call a spectator sport, and there's limited practice ice in Europe, which puts the European skaters at a disadvantage. Now, in June, a vote will be taken by the member countries of the ISU. Like the United Nations General Assembly, each country only gets 1 vote. The proposal has touched off a real controversy in the skating world. People from the skating powerhouses, such as the United States, Canada, and the Soviet Union, want to keep them. It gives them the edge. On the other hand, countries with skaters who are held back by weak figures are for dropping them. But the issue goes far deeper. People are finally asking, what's the role that figures play in skating?
The whole reason figure skating is called figure skating is because of figures. Well, may I say that only the English-speaking people called our sport figure skating? That is not the right word for our sport? That all the rest of the world call it artistic skating?
Honestly, I think figure skating would really be at a loss. Most of all, I just think it's heritage. You can't just cut off something. It's part of the sport.
Not only are they a tradition dating back to the wonderful designs of Gillis Crastrom's era, But sides are now drawn and emotions run high over the debate as to whether or not figures are only an art form in themselves or the very foundation for skating, like the scales of the piano, providing the basic skills for free skating, body awareness, and the edge control so crucial to skating.
My major thing now with my students is that these kids realize that without compulsory figures, there would be no jumps. There would be no footwork. There would be no program.
They are really basically like the scales for a pianist. But as for a pianist that plays these scales to learn to play the piano, when he gives a concert, he just plays the symphony and not the scales.
And the argument has been made that ice dancers and pair skaters who do not do compulsory figures are still very good skaters. But even so, the biggest concern to most skaters and coaches is how it will affect the quality of free skating and what direction skating will go without them.
I think definitely if you drop figures, you're going to find a different kind of sport. I think it's going to go professional.
Who knows what the economic ramifications are going to be. I mean, coaches aren't going to be teaching as many lessons. Rinks aren't going to be selling as many hours of ice time. It could really hurt the sport. It could kill the sport. The ISU, being, you know, what they are, they don't care. You know, it's just, it costs them money to have figures at a championship. They don't care what it does to the rest of the sport, as long as they can have another cocktail party.
The ISU, of course, doesn't quite see it that way. They believe they're freeing skating from an anchor they've carried for too long. The United States and Canada have submitted proposals for compromises that might make it possible to retain school figures in some form. Somewhere, the ghost of Gillis Grofstrom, the greatest of all school figure skaters, will be cheering.
Going into the third figure, Katarina Witt was in second place, a good position for her. The third and final figure was the left forward outside paragraph loop. Here the skater does two smaller loops inside each of the larger circles. The entire figure is skated on one foot and then repeated on the other foot. And of course, the important thing here is that those loops be kind of elongated and be clearly lined up and on axis with each other. It's a very difficult figure. Now you can see this loop figure is considerably smaller than the first two figures, and it takes even greater control. It was not to be Katarina's best figure.
Her loops were a little small in shape, and she dropped to third place overall.
Once again, the judges moved in, and Katarina Witt skated to the edge of the rink to join her coach, Udo Muller. They have a very special relationship.
3.9, 3.7.
Jill Trenary was in seventh place coming into the final figure.
You can see here that her tracings were very close, a very nice print. The loops were a good shape, the circles lined up, and so did the loops. Very nicely done.
It pulled her up to fourth place overall. I guess it was a pretty good satisfying feeling for her, especially after last year. Her father, Bob Trenary, shared her excitement. And so did her coach, Carlo Fassi, Carlo's wife. And then it was Debi Thomas's turn. She was in third place coming into the final figure.
The pressure was really on. This is a figure that really takes nerves of steel. It's a very small figure. The judges stand very close, and the tracing is so small. She did an excellent job. Very solid figure, very even, solid flow throughout this whole loop figure.
Those edges were wonderfully steady, weren't they? Look at the swing and the change of edge right there.
And just an excellent tracing, very close, very neat.
She won that figure as she had won the second figure, and it moved her into second place overall. Katarina Witt was right up there in the audience along with Udo Muller, and Debbie talked with Alex McGowan afterwards. I think she had a very satisfying feeling about the quality of that figure. The results after the figures: Ivanova, Debi Thomas, Katarina Witt. Jill Trenary moved into fifth, and Karen Kadevi into seventh.
Katarina, how do you feel after the school figures? You're now in third place.
I feel very good and I'm satisfied with this result. It's much better than last year. I was fifth last year after the compulsory figures, and so I'm happy about these.
What is your attitude going to be going into the short program with Debi Thomas being in second place?
Well, I have to give my best to try to win the short program, and so it will be interesting then for the free program.
Well, good luck to you.
Okay.
Are you glad it's over?
I'm definitely glad it's over, and I'm really happy because I was able to win 2 out of the 3 figures, and I feel like I fought pretty hard through the whole competition.
You certainly came up beautifully from the first figure.
Yeah, I don't know what happened on the first figure. I didn't think it was really that bad, but I don't know. I think the marks were kind of up and down, and so I knew that I needed to really nail the second 2 figures pretty close to the best that I could.
And do you think you did?
Yeah, there were a few little things that maybe could have been better, but considering all the pressure and the way that you feel when you're competing figures, I think I did really well.
Now what?
Well, basically skate clean from here on out and do the best that I can.
Any particular approach to it?
Nothing different than what I usually do in the past, just sort of try and psych myself up to do the best performance that I can.
I have seen you psych yourself up beautifully.
Great, thanks.
Good luck with it.
Thank you.
Walk me through, the different figures and the different competitors and what their strengths were.
1988 is, I think, in my opinion, maybe the epic Olympic Games. I was a young teenager at the time, and I was so moved by the Battle of the Carmens and the Battle of the Bryans. And then, of course, Gordieva, Grinkov, and Jill. And, it's like, it was, that Olympics was epic. So in the figures, what did you have? You had the counter?
Yeah, we had a counter. I can't remember if it was
inside,
left outside or left inside.
I think, it was maybe the left inside counter. And I guess Kira Ivanova knocked it out of the park on that one, and got super high. She saw something different.
What did you see, Debbie? What did you see?
It's on video. I'm sorry. That may she rest in peace. I was like 4th on that figure. I have no idea why. Like, I don't remember messing it up on the counter. And there's there's a video and Dick's saying how Kira won the figure, and she literally does this move where I won't say she almost fell, but she went way like off balance coming out of the counter, and I was like how did she win that figure by a mile and do that? So I don't know.
This was Kira Ivanova of the Soviet Union as she skated her figure. Right here, she stepped onto a forward inside edge and approached the turn. Now watch very carefully. Right here, you will see her tracings. They weren't as close as they could have been. Despite some flaws in her tracings, the judges felt her counter turns and the shape and size of her circles were superior to the others. Ivanova took the lead after the first figure and never relinquished it throughout the compulsory figure competition.
I don't know.
Jill Trenary.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about Katarina Witt's figures? Because one of the great moments of that compilation vignette about the figures is Peggy Fleming trying to make sense of Katarina Witt's figures in a very elegant way. And she says, the figures are a little bit smaller, but
yes,
yes, strength in the past, but this year the judges see them better, or they seem better. Can you talk us through her figures?
It's funny, Dave. I picked up on that too, watching the video, and I thought,
it makes me howl. She's a master. She's an icon.
Yeah, I have to say, first of all, I love Katarina Witt. I skated a show
Who doesn't? Yeah.
with her years ago, and we did this thing together. It's a long story. And I love her, and I have some fun experiences and memories with Katarina. So I want to say, start out with that. In the video where Peggy's commentating, it's very clear. And watching her skate the figures, I got the feeling she was very nervous and she wasn't confident necessarily. She knew that she was up against probably the greatest assemblage of lady skaters ever. There were about 6 skaters who probably could have gone gold on any day. And I think that she was very self-aware and very nervous, and was playing it safe and just trying to, I don't know, it would be very difficult being reigning Olympic champion and reigning world champion and then skate a figure event. That's what's so superhuman about being a favorite at the Olympic Games like Debbie, and then laying out the figures that she did, having that much fortitude and calmness under that kind of pressure. So I think that as you listen to the marks, you can hear the marks in the video, and some of them sound like 3s, 3-point something, 3-point. So I don't think they were probably Katarina's strongest figures, but they were strong enough, and they held their own. And that's quite an accomplishment. But I did pick up on that in the video. I noticed the same thing, and that look on her face.
Yeah, she was very nervous, but Katarina is, I mean, one of the toughest competitors of all time.
Yeah.
I mean, she, I remember once we did this show in, I can't remember where we were, France or Italy or so. I think we were in Italy, and and it was kind of one of these like off-season shows, so like nobody was really in shape or anything, and nobody could do any triples on practice, and I was just like, well, I'm gonna do a triple toe, so I do my program, do my triple toe, and I'm like, yeah, and Katarina, she wasn't landing any triples either, but because I did one, she's like, okay, well, I'm going to do 2. It's like, you can't one up her.
Yeah. I have a story, a cat story. I was backstage with her at another show, and she was literally putting her foot in and out of her skate and crying and freaking out because she was in so much pain and she had to skate. And, she looks over and she grabs my arm and she says, pray for me, wish me luck. I don't know how I'm going to do this. And there's something happened, like just clicked, and she shoves her foot down her skate, ties it up, and starts to kind of move. Something came out of her like a soldier behind the curtain, and they called her name. She went out skating. She skated a clean program, and she was in like crying level pain. I don't know how she did it, but something in East Germany, they taught them.
Well, it's so funny because one of the great competitions to watch after I've taken my melatonin at night and I'm relaxing in bed is Debbie's final competition. It's a professional event and she's against Katarina Witt, and Debbie skates just lights out. And this is the number where Katarina comes out in the red catsuit. And I'm not saying that the judging is fair, but I'm saying it's theatrical. And I am saying that this is one of the campiest, greatest broadcasts I think I've ever seen, in seeing the two of you be the utmost versions of yourselves out there. It is one of the great competitions to watch.
Olympic gold medalist who seems as happy as she has been in recent years, say those who know her best. Here is Katarina Witt. And she now skates to Louis Armstrong's Let's Fall in Love.
Well, you just saw Elizabeth Manley wow them. Now watch Katarina Witt seduce them.
Katarina, you had perfect 10s. Was it a perfect performance?
Yeah, it was perfect for me. I mean, yeah, it's a wonderful program. It's fun doing it. I mean, it's different, it's a lot of standing around and posing, so it's not as powerful than the technique program was. But Sonja and I, we wanted to do something different. And I did my triple jump and the other jump combination, and I just played with it, and I had fun. And thank you for all the 10s.
How much did the week back in Berlin with your coach help you?
It helped a lot. I'm very glad that Frambilla is with me, that I went back to her to Germany to train with her there and being here. And she's very strong and very tough, and that's what I need before a competition.
Debi Thomas. She won the bronze in Calgary in 1988. She has been touring off and on as a professional since. That part of her life is about to end. She is about to enter medical school. So now in one of her last competitive performances, here is the lovely Debi Thomas. Debi Thomas skating to variations of Rhapsody on a theme of Paganini.
Double axel right here. Beautiful landing.
Can you tell us about Jill Trenary? Because if you watch the broadcast from the 80s, there is nothing more compelling than the drama of Jill Trenary in a CBS fluff piece. If she is missing a figure, crying on the payphone, nailing the next one, you don't know what is going to happen. So how good were Jill's figures?
Bob Trenary has been totally supportive of his daughter's dream of becoming a world champion. Through the drudgery, to seem right, it will require hours of agonizing attention to detail, each tracing examined by the master. Then, more grueling hours of skating that take a physical and emotional toll.
I come with you during the program, okay? And you do what I said, okay? Don't do it what you want. You do what I said. I don't want the triple flip tonight. You already got mad, you see, immediately. Relax it. You're tired. You do it every day. No, come on. Leave it. Let's see triple toe.
Despite Fassi's instruction, Jill tried the triple flip anyway.
Jill, come on. I told you to do a double tonight. Relax a little. Okay. Relax, leave it. We don't do the program tonight, nothing. Why do you do this? Come on. Easy a second. Jill, are you kidding? Come here. Jill, come here. Are you kidding? I know you're tired. That's why I said don't do it. What the heck is the problem? Okay, leave it. Come on. Relax. It's fine. Okay? Do one foot axel. You're doing fine. You're just tired. Okay? It's been all week of interview, camera, like that, and you have to go to school, and you have to come home, and you have no time to relax. I know it. I went through with everybody. You know, with Dorothy, with Robin, and like that. You have to relax. Take it easy. Don't get all tied up about for nothing, okay?
Jill's figures were excellent. I skated with her every day. As we talked about, I worked with Carlo and Krista Fassi. I loved working with them. And Jill and I worked very hard, and we were so focused that on occasion, we would run into each other on practice, and Carlo would freak out. But it was okay. You know, he loved us, and, we were fine. But we were very intense, both training together. And Jill was very much a mentor to me. She was, very encouraging when I was like in the junior level and junior worlds, and then moving up into senior. Jill was very, very encouraging and a very good friend, and her figures were excellent. And she had this packaging where she was so beautiful, and she was so like put together, and she really was a Fassi masterpiece, as was Jill.
Barbie doll, like a human Barbie doll.
A human Barbie doll, as was Karen. Karen Kadavi was like that as well. They were both masterpieces, gorgeous.
What was Karen like? Because she has a more delicate quality, that dancer quality that she has.
As a child, when I was in Denver, I would see her skate at the regionals and the sectionals and nationals, and I'd move down to train with her. And I loved her hip movement. I loved her, like she had like
she's bouncy.
Yeah, she
Like,
had a cool showgirl quality
Yeah,
about her, but that
she's-
was it was just cool.
Yeah.
But again, like packaged like to a 10.0. She had the complete package, and her figures were excellent. She had everything. And it was just that in 1988, there were so many. We had Midori Ito, we had Liz Manley, and we had Kira. She was amazing. She could be amazing. So there was a lineup of ladies who were super strong. I can't even imagine, being in that group, to be able to do what Debi has done in her career, and in that particular Olympics, that epic Olympic Games. In my opinion, that was the last time that skating really truly was figure skating. I like to say that in the 70s, figure skating lost its virginity. It sort of, yes. It went from being 60% figures, and then the introduction of the short program, and Dorothy Hamill comes on board, and I used to go to Tyler Cranston's house and stay with him, and he would gossip about everyone, and he was brilliant and funny and a genius and amazing, and he'd paint and I'd make jewelry, and he would talk to me about Dorothy and about how he believed that she was the closest to Sonia Henie in her career and her career model of our generation. And I think that skating evolved and was changed in the 70s. As a child, I remember how famous Dorothy was. There is an Andy Warhol painting of Dorothy Hamill. She was a cultural icon, and maybe for a time the biggest star in America for a stretch of time. So that made a big impression on people like Christian Maguchi and Debi and me and many other skaters. So I think skating's history, I was kind of like in the middle of, when I began skating, it was 60% in the Trixi Schuba era and the Tim Wood era, and then it through the middle of my career, figures were cut away from the free skating, right smack in the middle. So when World Figure and Fancy Skating Championships came along, it was like there was unfinished business.
This move is triple axel. First rate. Double toe loop. Very nice again.
There was something that was left undone.
Well, Debi, what did it feel like to win 2 figures at the Olympics, and how the heck did you not win overall?
Well, I messed up the long program. That's
a long program. I'm talking about the figures. Like, didn't Kira?
How did I win 2 figures? Well, that's what I'm saying.
You win 2 out of 3. You're
saying,
fourth in the one. Like,
somehow they, I mean, figure skating is figure skating, and I pretty much knew that, they weren't going to let me get too much of a lead over Katarina. I don't think. I just think that, there's a certain level of politics that are involved in figure skating where, they're not going to let me have a big lead going in. Because I was basically second and first going into the long. So I mean, if I had won figures and second in free, like I might not have had to win the free program to win possibly. And I think they wanted whoever won the free program to be the champion. So there has to be a certain level of suspense involved, leading into a final. But yeah, I mean, I to this day, I don't know why I was fourth on the first figure. Like if I had actually messed the figure up, I could see, but I don't recall messing the figure up.
I guess to add some context to this, And again, fourth at the Olympics on a figure. So, but Debi's standard is so high that when she lays out a figure that she's confident and she knows is really strong for her, which was the counter, she was surprised that she didn't end up where she thought she would have been, because I guess you watched the other girls and knew kind of what they did.
No, I mean, I didn't watch them. I just, I know it's like you kind of know where you're at. And so
yeah, okay.
Generally in figures, whoever doesn't choke wins. I mean, that's really how it, I mean, because you're so nervous when you're doing those figures. I mean, you really.
So she is nervous.
Doug Mattis used to
she just admitted
it. You're standing there waiting to start, and then Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You're 100 feet tall, and you can't, see your feet, and it's very nerve-wracking. So when you actually can go out there and trace a figure and not make a major mistake, or not just shake and bobble all over the place because you're shaking so much.
I agree with that.
Generally,
I agree with that assessment, that if you lay out something that is solid, it's so rare that the person who does, it might be one person who does a really great figure. And that's what you want to do, is be calm enough, because most people won't.
Well, Debi, you talk about high standards. How good is Shepard at figures?
Thank you, Shepard Clark.
His figures are really good.
Like how good? Like what are we talking?
Like they're like I can't even trace one line on if I'm doing it on 2 feet. And you'll look over at Shepard's tracings and he's like a tracing master.
Mm-hmm.
And he has the edges and the curves. He still has the control. I don't know if it's my skates or me. I just recently went up to do a seminar up in DC area, and so I finally got a chance to go see my exhibit at the Smithsonian. And so I asked them, I said, I don't know if it's my skates or me. Can I borrow these? Because it's my figure blade. It's my figure boots from the Olympics that they have there.
Yeah, the Hope Diamond,
yes,
the ruby
I
slippers, and
the
Debbie skates.
Smithsonian if I could borrow my skates. But yeah, I don't know what it is. I mean, we've moved the blades all over the boots, tried different sharpenings, tried everything, and it's not the same. So I don't know.
I have.
What are the two of you practicing every day?
How long?
Like what's your regimen like? What is the daily regimen for this event?
It depends. Sometimes Debbie and I will get up at like 4 to 5 in the morning. We'll be at the gym when it opens at 5.
Okay.
And we go through a 2-hour warm-up period because being in our 50s, we don't take any chances with injuries. And for flexibility, for becoming leaner and more flexible and increasing our stamina, like onion skin layers to build a mountain.
Mm-hmm.
Just on a funny note, I remember I arranged for Trixi Schuba to come visit me, and she asked me. She said, in her Austrian accent, I'll never forget this. She says, "Oh, Shepard, I've never been to Disney since I was a little girl. I've wanted to go. Please take me." So I have a time. Trixi Schuba came to Orlando and worked with me on my figures, and I took her to Disney. So among the strange random experiences in my life, the greatest skater of figures of all time, and I said, "How did you manage to do what you did?" And she shared some things with me that she had me promise not to tell unless I got permission from her, which make a lot of sense. She told me her story and how she was able to do the figures. Makes a lot of sense. And it was interesting. I felt very blessed to have an opportunity to work with her on the ice a little bit because she doesn't typically interface with skating that much. But I've taken that with me, and I know that when I was with Don Laws and when I was with Carlo and Krista Fassi, they knew that I could lay out figures that were very strong and I could trace very closely. And if I didn't maintain that standard, they liked that about me. So I stayed on the ice for extra hours trying to maintain that standard, and it served me well. And I guess I worked extra hard because I had such a traumatizing start to my figure skating career. I loved free skating, but figures, they were just traumatizing. But I learned to love them. I fell in love with them. And I just think that like each day I go out, I try to skate for as long as possible. Fortunately enough, we have this amazing facility where we train, and they've been very supportive of both of us. And they said, "Look, whatever ice time you need, go ahead and skate and be around our skaters and just be yourselves and do what you do. And we're here to support you." And we've been really blessed by that. Yeah. You should come and skate with us.
I would love to.
I know I can actually answer your question. I skate 4 times a week.
Okay.
I do figures. I do go in at 5 and I get in the therapy pool for like an hour and a half, and I do my figures in the pool. Like it took me, I had to do that because I really didn't have good balance when I first started. And the pool like keeps me from falling over. And so I do that, and it's warm, so it loosens the muscles up, because when you're old, you're just stiff, and you have to have a lot of rotational flexibility to do figures. Then I sit in the hot tub for like 20 minutes, trying to get loose. And then I go and I'll skate I'll probably do figures for about an hour and a half. And then freestyle for about 30 minutes. But just this week, I started doing like 3 sessions in a row. So 2 hours of figures. And
well, I have a goal of passing my adult gold moves test with like honors, right? And the one thing that was really holding me back was that I had upper cross syndrome. I also had lower cross, and I've worked obsessively on correcting it in my back with Pilates. So now I can rotate and move my shoulder. Yeah. So if you could give me tips on my back inside loop on from the second to the third curve is my challenge. So I think that this would be phenomenal. And are you roping Oksana into doing figures? Because she mentioned skating with you, and I thought Shepard he's gonna get her to do this. She's like, Dave, Shepard, he did the figures. I did them as a girl in Dnipro. And yes, Oksana, you did the figures, yes. So are you gonna get her to do this? Because she also pretends like she's not gonna skate.
I told her to at least bring her skates and skate with us after.
We're having a reunion. It's going to be awesome. I think Dorothy's coming in possibly, and I've talked to a few others.
If she would do the 10th year.
Yeah, this is.
I think I'm gonna. I was like, I thought this would be a one-hit wonder, but now the more I think about these figures, it's like I think I'm gonna have to do next year's too.
Yes, it's my hope that Oksana may participate and we can honor her. We love Oksana, and she is so intelligent. She has a business mind, and she has a perspective on things that is extraordinary. So, I have to say, I think that in our conversations with the board of the World Figure Sports Society, her name has come up. And when I look at you, Dave, and I see who you are, how important you are to skating's history, and as an archivist and as an adult skating performer. I watched your performance this afternoon, and I've looked at some of your other performances. You really do have an aesthetic to your skating. I loved your ending. It was what was it?
It was Pagliacci when I died on the ice.
It wasn't that one. It was, I think Sandra Bezic might have worked with you on the
Waterfront program?
Waterfront.
Okay.
Beautiful program. Lovely ending, especially the last spin. And I liked your axle. But you really do have a sense of who you are and what you want to say on the crystal stage. So our purpose with the World Figure Sports Society and the World Figure and Fancy Skating Championships is to help a skater to experience the star art culture of figure skating, and to bring you at your best, saying what you want to say, bring that to the crystal stage, and be a part of a world level award culture.
Well, who else can we get involved? Because I tell Yuri all the time that he should do this, because when he demonstrates.
He's a great skater. Yuri is a great skater. Yeah.
I want to see you do beautiful loops. I heard that you were like really good at the figures.
Inside or outside?
Both. So let's do inside first. So good. All right, let's see outside.
What about Brian Boitano? We see him skating in gorgeous rink.
Absolutely. One of the things that's also unique about it is we're bringing more and more of the icons. Many of them have been judges, but we all get on the ice afterward and just skate together like back in the day, like back on the pond. It's social. So, when people come to the world's winter sports capital, to the arena where Sonia Henie won her second Olympic gold medal, where there's a monument to Sonia out front, and they skate on the black ice, the finest fastest, smoothest ice in the world. They are having an authentic, once-in-a-lifetime experience. We want to provide an authentic Legends of the Lake experience to build upon this art movement based out of the world's winter sports capital, to place skating in the center of the art world as the world's most comprehensively artistic activity, promoting it to a billion new skating fans in unexpected places like Africa. We have a skater from Tanzania. We have a skater from Syria. We have a skater from India. We have a skater from Brazil and other countries, unexpected countries. There are population bases that could get so much out of the jeweled sport.
Well, how about, who do you like now in terms of skating? You talk about this art movement, and I think it's so interesting because I was thinking about this before we were going to chat about who's skating I really like today, right? And obviously I watch a lot of competitive skating, but I wouldn't say that those are who I think are the great skaters right now. I don't know if you've seen Yebin Mock or
Yebin Mock, fabulous.
Liz Schmidt or David Shapiro. You need
Liz Schmidt, David Shapiro, Yebin Mock. You just mentioned, artists, yes.
You need to get them doing the figures. You know, these are people that you need to pass on this legacy to. Yes. And I think Paulina Edmonds, with all of her technical love, and she took all of her dance tests, I think Paulina needs to learn the figures for your documentary, Debbie.
Paulina is a delightful skater, an awesome person. We would love to have Paulina.
Well, I pitched it to a producer today, so we'll see.
Yeah, I think it definitely would be very.
The only thing is, it's like, you know, we only have a year. So, you know, in television, it takes forever to put things together.
We've been working on a media series that tells the story.
In order to do it leading up to, you know, the 10th year and the 100th anniversary of the Winter Olympics.
I think you need Lorna Brown in the Rolls Royce with you popping up.
I agree.
The campiest, most outrageous, most entertaining thing we have seen. Okay.
Absolutely. I love Lorna. She's a very close personal friend. The first year I won world figure and fancy skating championships, I have to tell you that the person who put the gold medal around my neck was Dorothy Hamill. Dorothy was also the last person to call my mother before she passed away. Absolutely incredible story, true story. And just after Dorothy put the gold medal on me, Lorna Brown came up with the trophy, the John Curry Memorial Trophy, which is the old world professional trophy. And she looked at me in her lovely British accent and she said, "Shepard, I can't believe I'm handing this to you." It's so heavy. I almost fell over on her. I said, "I know. I love Lorna. If you can come, I hope you can come. I'll try to see if I can get Lorna to come too."
Yeah, I will do it for this reunion. When are we doing this, Shepard?
October 6th through the 8th. I think the competition starts on the 5th. Columbus Day.
I'll do it. We're there. I'm coming. Get Paul Wiley to do his figures. I'm sure he could do it.
I begged him. I love Paul. I don't know that. I think he could be a great judge. I think that Paul would probably judge, maybe.
Okay. Talk about the men from Calgary, just while I have you here. Brief notes. Boitano, Orser, Petrenko, Fadeev, Browning, Bowman, Wiley. Whose figures do you like and what do you like about them?
Which began early this morning in Father David Bauer Arena, moves to its climax Saturday night. The subject today was compulsory figures, which count for 30% of each skater's mark. This is a tense business, quiet, precise, as opposed to the noise and excitement of a free skating final. This was Brian Boitano of the United States preparing for the quiet battle. And here, Brian Orser. He's world champion, but compulsories are not his strong point. Alexander Fadeev of the Soviet Union is a former world champion and very good at compulsories. Let's learn more about figures now from Dick Button, starting with the skate.
ice. Instead, he starts on a clean sheet of ice and creates the figure with the tracing the blade leaves. This was Alexander Fadeev in his rocker. You can see him here on the back outside edge, completing the first circle. Now watch him push off from the right foot to the left, complete the middle circle with its connecting turn right there, and now skate on the forward outside edge for the completion of the third turn. The judges looked for round circles that are equal in size, lined up on axis, and with firm edges all the way through. The original print must be retraced 2 times very closely. Although disappointed, Alexander Fadeev won the first figure and never relinquished his lead, leaving the battle between Brian Orser and Brian Boitano still to come.
Something of a specialist in the school figures took the lead as expected. However, behind him were Brian Orser and Brian Boitano, Orser of Canada, Boitano of the United States, trying to get the strongest position they could going into the short program. Dick Button reports.
Coming into the third and final figure, Brian Orser was in 4th place and under a great deal of pressure. The third figure is called a change loop. It's a figure with 3 circles with a small loop at each end. The important thing is the shape of the loops at each end. They must not be fat and round, but kind of elongated, and they must face each other and be on axis. The skaters don't have a diagram like this to follow. They must create their own on clean ice. Brian Boitano was in 3rd place going into this figure. He was behind Heiko Fischer of West Germany and Alexander Fadeev. This was the way Brian Orser skated the back outside change loop. Now you can see how small this figure was. To do this figure right, the skater must have very steady nerves, a steel-like concentration. The print is very small, and even the slightest glitches show up clearly. And then the judges moved in to look over the print. There are 9 judges, and even Brian Orser couldn't resist looking to see how he had done. The judges not only looked for the print on the ice, they also had to consider the way he skated the figure. Did he have good style? Were the edges smooth and consistent? Brian skated a good figure. It moved him into 3rd place overall. And then it was Brian Boitano's turn. Earlier, he talked with us about the intensity of compulsory figure competition.
Competition days when you're doing a compulsory event, you're exhausted after them because all you do for 6 hours of that compulsory day is think of what you have to do, what you have to remember, and it's so fine-tuned that just the slightest mistake can take you off, so you have to make sure that you know what you're doing.
You could hear a pin drop in the arena when he skated this figure. The entire competition took an incredible 7 hours. There was no way the skaters could maintain their tension through that time. And in order to relax, believe it or not, Brian Boitano was actually able to take a nap. Boitano has improved tremendously in the compulsory figure portion of competition. I think he was very happy with this figure, and it left him in 2nd place overall. The hard work had paid off. The final results then were Fadeev, Boitano, and Orser in the first 3 places. Christopher Bowman was in 8th, Paul Wiley in 12th place.
Well, Brian had fantastic figures. I mean, He did. He had fantastic everything, I think.
Fadeev had good figures.
Fadeev's figures were excellent. Yeah. I think as a boy, as a young teenager, seeing Brian win as he did was profound. That was a powerful title. Seeing Debi go out and make history as she did I was at a very impressionable age, and Junior Worlds, very intense on the fast track in my career as a teenager. So that was a very exciting time for me, and highly impactful. I think in 1988, with Gordieva Grinkov, hello. And friends of mine in high school who had nothing to do with skating were watching figure skating, and they paid attention to it for the first time and were enamored of the skating stars. And I felt, because I grew up in Atlanta as a child in the 70s, it was not cool to be a male figure skater. So I had to deal with that too. And when I moved to Denver, things were a little different. But in the 80s, these skaters made skating cool, and it made a big difference in my life.
Well, you talked about skating for life. And yesterday, Renee Roca sent me a video of Richard Dwyer skating at 87. And it was one of the most beautiful things, working on the figures every single day. How long do you think it's possible to, maintain your agility and do figures? And does it keep you agile?
I think that it's something that a person can do for decades.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's a good thing to do for therapy, for coordination and control. I think that artistic skating, like moving sculpture, to be seamless and beautiful is therapeutic. Like Pilates is fantastic. That's the best thing you can do.
I do it every day for an hour, Shepard. I do Pilates.
Yeah. I'm impressed because it's the best training technique I ever used off the ice is Pilates.
The best performance enhancing drug, right? Like
yes. Yeah. I think that there has to be a way that people can skate for a lifetime, continue to improve. That's where difficulty doesn't necessarily have to be dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm.
Very important.
Yeah, it's a great point. Well, as we move forward to October, if you think about your dream figure at the event, what would you like it to feel like doing for both of you?
Dream figure.
Yes, Debi, come on. Debi acts like she's too cool for this. How she does,
I don't want to scrape. I don't want to.
I don't believe you
on my toe. I don't want to swear.
Right.
Shepard, do you not believe her?
If I manage to do all of those things, I'll be happy.
She's gonna do a killer figure. You know it, right? I know it. You know it. God knows it. Come on.
It's a good thing the judges don't watch the figure because they have a special judging where the judges are sequestered and there's just a referee to make sure you don't put your foot down or swear or those things.
Yeah, there's a referee assigned to each skater.
The judges don't actually watch the figure.
Yeah. So
but we have figures that we have a figure that has a waltz jump in it. We have a figure that has a spin in it.
Out of the 5?
Yeah.
They're really hard.
These are not figures that I did.
They're really hard.
You have videos of yourself practicing these?
We can make you one.
Yes.
I think I need to include these in this interview. So if you can send them I will edit these in because people need to see these. This will, I think, really motivate people to watch.
My wall step is more like a step over.
You wouldn't,
because you have to. I had to come up with a strategy. I'm actually using figure blades. So I have a really hard time with the spinny figure. But I can't do it in my freestyle blades either. But yeah, I figured out a technique, to do the waltz jump so that I don't, what was it you said the other day about?
Yeah, there's a point I make with Debi. I did a triple axel for almost 20 years. And, one of the things I never would have imagined is that you take the most basic jump, a waltz jump, and if you put it on a figure, it becomes like unbelievably difficult. Yeah, it's sort of a crazy thing. I
can't even imagine, dude. That's so, yeah.
Because you have to figures are about, lack of movement and control and balancing on something that's 1 to 2 millimeters wide. So tracing a takeoff, tracing a landing, trying to then control the landing. We realize that on jumps, how much variation in one jump to another there is. And so we kind of cheat and kind of like regain our balance, but you cannot do that on a figure. Mm-hmm. So it really does, to a great degree, fine tune. And it's kind of shocking how difficult. There's a little spin on one of the figures. We also do a Maltese cross, which is, I think, 140 years old, a figure that's very, very old and difficult. Very easy to put your foot down or fall on it. Mm-hmm. The quad 3 is another one. It's a small figure with 3 turns on the ends.
Cupcake.
Yes, you call it. I hate that name. And then there's
quad 3 cupcake.
Yeah. Then there's what's the other one? Oh, the loop clover.
The loop clover, yeah.
Yeah, the loop clover.
It's called the loop-de-loop.
Loop-de-loops, yes. So we have that. Then we have the creative figure where we come up with a design that is going to be some kind of a composition. We have a little longer time to skate it. Mm-hmm. And there's some rules about how we can skate it. But I think that's the most satisfying figure, the creative figure, coming in and bringing something that you have designed. That's half the competition, is the creative figure and the fancy. Mm-hmm. So as an artist, bringing your own creativity to the crystal stage, that's half the competition. The other half is the 5 requisites figures that everyone has to do.
Yeah, whoops.
You sold me on this event. I'm coming. I want to watch it. We're rooting for you. Thank you both so much for coming on. This is fascinating, and I can't offer you enough encouragement and support. I think this is fantastic.
Dave, we are so honored that you would have us on. We love what you do, and we look forward to seeing you on the ice.